see some familiar faces, so welcome back. Welcome to week 2 of Community Candid. Last week, Ms. Whitney Queen provided a detailed outline of financial wellness, giving the audience a glimpse into multiple tools used in financial stability throughout someone's life. We're extremely excited to have our guest speaker tonight and believe this week that Community Candid is an issue that affects us all directly or indirectly in some way. If you were able to join us last week, you heard the origin of Community Candid and how it all came about. We believe that this lecture series covers some topics that are part of the foundation of a true quality community. And as president of LBW, I feel like it's our best interest and our best interest for our institution to be committed in doing what's necessary to help move our community forward and help individuals within our community realize financial freedom and economic freedom. In doing so, back in the fall of 2021, I created the Community Leaders on Diversity Committee, and they're the driving force for this lecture series. This is where the idea was born in those committee meetings. I don't see any of them in the audience that are inside the community. We do have some internal people that are on that committee, so I won't ask anyone to stand, but that committee was the driving force of getting this thing moving. And then I do have an internal subcommittee who were the boots on the ground and the logistical people that got us to where we are today. I will ask them to stand if they are. I know we have Chad Sutton, Ms. Jeannie Sanders, and Ms. Meg Brady. They're here tonight. They have all been working behind the scenes to get this get us to where we are. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Ms. Meg Brady, and she will introduce our speaker.
Good evening, and thank you for attending the second Community Candid event hosted at LBW. I am Meg Brady, and I consult with LBW for the grants management processes. The purpose of Community Candid lecture series is to provide parents and guardians with the knowledge needed to support modern parenting and stressors. It is my honor to introduce Dr. Emma Cosby, tonight's speaker, and a community expert on the topic of mental health and peer pressure. Dr. Cosby has practiced in the mental health field since 1996, serving individuals of all ages, but specializing in work in adolescents and families. Dr. Cosby obtained a Doctor of Behavioral Health from Arizona State University in 2012, a Master's in Social Work from the University of Alabama in 1996, and a Bachelor's in Psychology from Birmingham Southern College in 1994. Dr. Cosby is licensed through the Board of Social Work Examiners as a licensed clinical social worker and a private independent practitioner. Dr. Cosby founded and practices at Southern Counseling Group here in Andalusia. She has practiced in a variety of settings, including intensive residential care for adolescents, outpatient mental health services, and therapeutic foster care. Specialty areas include patients with comorbid medical illness and mental health disorders, as well as trauma and trauma-related illnesses. Dr. Cosby has also received advanced training in couples therapy and blended family issues. Dr. Cosby brings a wealth of information and resources to tonight's lecture, drawing on professional experiences and research. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming Dr. Emma Cosby to the stage.
Good evening. I am really excited about, is my mic on? Can y'all hear me? No? Yes? Yes. Okay. I'm really excited about being here tonight. When I was invited to speak, this is a topic that I'm very passionate about because I see so many youth come into my office day in and day out, all struggling with the problem of peer pressure, bullying, and I watch how it impacts their mental health, and I know that we can do better. I know that there is more that we can do, and I know that our children deserve better than what we are doing so far. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity to speak to you all about something that I feel very passionate about, and that is learning more about bullying, learning about peer pressure, learning about how it affects our children, and then making decisions about what we can do about it, and hopefully influencing ourselves as a community to move forward and do something about it. And I believe that you've already heard this part. The only part that really I would like to add is that I have served as a lecturer at Arizona State University in integrated care for children and adolescents, and I have served as a field instructor for the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, Troy University, and Walden University. I love having students. This is my family. I know that it was mentioned earlier that I have some expertise in blended families, and that is not only from training expertise, that is from living expertise. So I married my husband Brent when my sons were in 1st grade and 3rd grade, and his sons were in 3rd grade and 5th grade. And so this is our Brady Bunch blended family. And our baby now is a senior at Auburn University, and it's just kind of unbelievable. I will tell you, it is a little bit of a trick to do counseling with children who go to school with your children. So many times I would have a kid, like, you know, a young person who was dating someone that broke their heart, and I'm holding my breath because I know they're the same age as my children, and I'm like, tell me the name, and I'm just really hoping that they don't say the name of my child, but we're past all of that now that they are grown and they are moving on and having families of their own. But this is my family, and a lot of the inspiration for this particular topic, though, comes from my nephew, who is on the right side of this screen. And this is my nephew, Gabe, and he gave me permission to use his name, and he had a lot to say to me about what he thought that I should share tonight. Gabe is on the spectrum, and he has high-functioning autism, and he is 18 years old. He has a job at Walmart. He graduated from Thompson High School in Birmingham. But he did experience a lot of bullying growing up, and he fought through it in lots of ways. And I'm going to use some of his examples and some of his stories, in addition to some real research that I did tonight, in order to speak to you. Now, the individual on the left is the reason that I'll be racing home as soon as the lecture is over, because this is my delightful grandson who we are raising, and his name is Caleb, and he's 3 years old. And I just put his picture up there because it's cute. So I thought that it would be nice for you to see him. And let's talk about what bullying is, just to get started, so that we're all on the same page, okay? It is physically or verbally aggressive behavior intended to cause harm or distress. The next sentence is, you know, there's two words that I'm going to probably introduce to you tonight, and maybe you have, I hope that I introduce them in a way that you forever think of them in a different way. And the first word that I really want you to hang on tonight is modifiable. Now that word has meant something very different to me the last year and a half, because a year and a half ago I was diagnosed with pneumococcal meningitis, which is a life-threatening illness that affects and attacks your brain. And I can remember going through treatment and having lost my memory and being in excruciating pain and all of the things that were happening to my body at the time. And I can remember the doctors using that word a lot. And I can remember them saying, this may be modifiable. This may be reversible. And of course, my mind automatically said, or it may not be. You know, I really get what you're saying to me. This may not be. And so when I saw this term in the bullying research, I got really excited. I just got super excited because the research is going to show that I'm going to talk about later that bullying is a modifiable risk factor for mental health problems. In other words, there is something that we can do about it. And how oftentimes do we feel that there's nothing we can do about it? I cannot tell you how many times I have kids sitting in my office saying, you know, but I can't make them stop. I can't make them quit picking on me. They do it every single day, and nothing makes it go away. And they feel very overwhelmed and like there is nothing they can do about it. But what I'm going to talk about tonight is the fact that there is something that we can do about it, okay, as a community, working together. There is something that we can do about it. Bullying is modifiable. And I just added the definition is to make partial or minor changes to something, typically so as to improve it or to make it less extreme, definitely preferred to unmodifiable. Now, I'd love for you to understand this concept because I may refer back to this concept a lot. We use this concept when we examine patients for mental health conditions, okay? We think about the risk factors that the patients have versus the protective factors that the patients have. And so if you're a parent who has a child who has a mental health problem, then what you really want to think about doing is adding to the protective factors list, okay? So if there's not a lot that you can do about some of the things on the left side of the page, maybe there's some things that you can add on the right side of the page. Because what we know for sure is that the more protective factors that the child has, the better the prognosis that they have. I'll tell you, I did residential care for 10 years at an inpatient facility that was for youth with extreme behavioral and emotional disorders. And I did a study that I didn't go through the International Review Board or anything, but I just did my own analysis of whether or not our program was effective. And I studied our youth coming in, and then I followed whether or not they got better or whether or not they got worse. And then I followed them for up to a year after they left our facility. And I did this study for about 3 years, okay? And I looked at all kind of different variables, like what really makes the difference. I looked at, is it the kind of therapy they received? Is it the kind of diagnosis they had? Maybe it's the medication that they took. What separates the kids from those who make it to those who don't? And I found something that just blew my mind, but it was overwhelmingly the number one biggest difference, and it was the number of people on their phone call list. And so if I looked at the kids that didn't make it, that got worse, that maybe went to lock up from our facility, they had their DHR worker and their JPO, and that was all that they had on their phone call list. They didn't have anybody on their phone call list. But the people who got better, they tended to have at least 5 people on their phone call list. And so that was the difference. And so that's what I'm talking about when I talk about risk factors versus protective factors. So let me just go through some of these quickly. Family history of mental illness is a risk factor. Family history of substance abuse, poverty, medical problems, learning difficulties, family violence, divorce, especially high conflict divorce, negative peer relationships, or feelings of isolation. That is a really big risk factor that we're going to talk about tonight. But I do just want to mention to you guys that I've worked in different areas of the state in my career. And I've noticed that in different areas of the state, you see different collections of problems. So in Dallas County, when I worked there, we saw a whole lot, of children with learning difficulties and children living in poverty. And they had a lot of that sort of stress. In this community, what we see a whole lot of are children who have a parent who is struggling with an addiction and is outside of the home, either in jail or rehab because of that addiction, and possibly being raised by a grandparent or even a great-grandparent, or in some cases a great-great-grandparent. And that is a lot of what we see here in Covenant County. And so, so keep in mind that we want to minimize the number that is on that side of the list. The protective factors, the presence of at least one stable influence in the child's life, intelligence, access to health care, intact two-parent households, positive peer interactions and feelings of acceptance, access to educational supports like speech and OT and ABA therapy, and positive health behaviors. I'm so thrilled that Andalusia now has the resource of ABA therapy. For so many years, we did not have that resource. And I'm thrilled that we have it in Andalusia and in Om. And it has made tremendous change in the lives of a lot of youth who have autism. Now, I do know that ABA therapy can be beneficial to other youth, and I'm hoping that insurance will start to approve it for other things besides autism. Bullying's called different names. Harassment is one of the names that is also used, but I really want to bring up the fact that sexual harassment is much more difficult for youth to process. It's difficult to prove. And what I am really seeing a lot of in my office is that the victims of sexual harassment often feel responsible. I had a young lady tell me just last week that she was afraid that she told me, finally confessed to me that a male peer was making really vulgar comments to her at school. And it was upsetting to her. She was fearful about it and didn't know how to take it and was very emotional about it. And then she said, but I think it's my fault. And she said, maybe it has something to do with, the clothes that I had on. And this young lady dresses very conservatively. So this is not someone who that would be warranted to say. But a lot of times, the people that are being harassed feel responsible and say they don't complain, but also they don't complain because they fear social alienation. Because if they tell, then that person's friends are going to be mad with them. And somehow word gets around to who told. And so they are afraid to say anything about it. And so it's really a huge issue, and I don't think I have it here, but I have it included in my presentation tonight. But I'm going to go ahead and say it now so I won't forget. There is so much pressure these days on people to send pictures. And y'all know I'm not talking about just regular pictures. And when I first got into this field, that started when youth were 16. That's not the case anymore. This is starting when young people are 12 years old. They are 12 years old and they are being asked to send pictures. They are 12 years old and they are being asked, hey, go in the bathroom and take a shower and put me on FaceTime while you're in the shower. That is what they're being asked to do. And then if they don't do it, I'm ghosting you, which means I'm not talking to you anymore. And you're just not going to have anybody, and I'm going to tell everybody that you're, I'm too conservative, or, that's not the word that they use, but you get the point. But they're criticized for that. And so they are under incredible pressure to engage in these kinds of things. And so you just need to understand the sort of pressures that your young person is experiencing. Hazing is a major problem. This is something that when I was in school, hazing was a college thing. We didn't have hazing in my 1A high school. It just wasn't a thing. I didn't even hear about hazing until I got to college. But hazing is a thing here now, and it is really commonly seen among groups of youth. And that could be groups of athletes. That could even be church groups, okay? And this, I heard a story, and I hate to repeat bad news, but I heard a story on the radio a few days ago of a young person who suffered a concussion from a pillow fight, where the young people were stuffing objects in the pillows and hitting the new players with pillows. And, one of the youth sustained a concussion. from that. So it's just very alarming, the kinds of things that our kids are doing that really, in that instance, they probably feel is harmless, and they probably feel like this is just part of the way that we're kind of, you know, working in the newcomers. But it's dangerous, and we need to make our young people aware of the dangers that occur with that. And teasing intensifies in a group. So have y'all ever seen a pack of dogs get on a dog or get on an animal, a smaller animal? Like, I can remember when I was in this residential program, I lived on campus, I was like a house mom. And so I had a couple of dogs that were really tame dogs, but one day, this mama deer and this baby deer ran across and jumped into the pond where I was sitting and started swimming towards me, and I don't know if the dogs thought that the deer were coming after me or what the dogs thought, but they went after that baby deer, okay? And they got on the baby deer, okay? And it was very difficult to get the dogs off the baby deer, and I did get the dogs off the baby deer. No animals were harmed in that story, but my point is, I have seen the same phenomenon occur in groups of youth, okay? And I don't want to pick on schools because groups of youth are not only at school. Groups of youth are sometimes in the church parking lot, and sometimes they are in the Pickens parking lot. I mean, groups of youth can be found in the square. They can be found in lots of different places, but a lot of times when one person starts to pick at a kid and another person laughs, then another person and another person and another person starts to pick at that kid, and then more laugh, and it grows, okay? And so that is something to be aware about, and that is something I hope that we talk to our young people about not participating in that group bullying. Kids say that they're just joking, and when they say that they're just joking, a lot of the victims of bullying that I work with start to question themselves. Well, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they are just playing with me. And the thing that really, I think, angers me more than anything else is when I have a youth that has high-functioning autism and doesn't really understand social interaction as well as other youth. And they really don't understand that the person is being mean. And they are being mean, and I know they're being mean. But when that kid says, I'm just joking, then they take their word for it. They say, oh, I didn't tell because they were just joking. And, you know, it's difficult because it makes it harder for me to teach that young person what bullying is because they're getting this misinformation from other people who are mistreating them. What is not bullying? At the same time, since I was already talking about ASD, let me mention that I do have youth who have ASD, and who will engage in teasing without knowing that they are being mean, without knowing that they are, you know, like I had a young person who called a person fat, and they were 8 years old, and they had ASD, and I really think what happened was a peer said, do you think they're fat? And they said, yeah, I think they're fat. But they were really just answering a question in their mind. They didn't really mean to be saying something ugly. Didn't understand that was what that was. But anyway, so I think that is not bullying. But I put the number one question, I put roasting up there because I want you to just think about that. I'm not going to say one way or the other. And I didn't research roasting. But I keep hearing this word. It is trending in my office. So it makes me think it is trending at school. And the trend that I keep hearing is teachers engaging in roasting the students along with the students roasting other students. And so that is, you know, a climate of let's all make fun of each other, and it's all funny until somebody takes it personally and probably laughs in the group and goes home and cries. But I keep hearing about that, and it's so risky. And I know that teachers want their students to feel that they can relate to them, but I wish they would find another way to do that, because I think that roasting is the wrong way to do that. Sarcasm may not be bullying, but did you know that it literally means tearing at the flesh? And I put this in there because I'll be honest with you, I used to be extremely sarcastic. Growing up, I was the most sarcastic person, and I just was. I mean, I thought it was funny to be sarcastic, and I would make sarcastic comments. I come from a big sibling group. I had 2 sisters and a brother, and I was sarcastic all the time with my sisters and my brother, and I was just that person. But I've learned as I've grown how harmful sarcasm can be. And oftentimes we think of it as just being funny, but if you pay attention, then the only person laughing is like the person that is saying it. But the person who's on the receiving end is normally not laughing over a sarcastic remark. Lighthearted teasing among friends that is clearly teasing is probably okay. But you need to understand that bullying is defined by perception. So a lot of it has to do with how a person takes it. And as adults, hopefully, we're at the point where we can say to a coworker or to a friend or to even a partner, did you mean that? Because it really came off as like rude. And they can say, oh no, I didn't mean that. Or they can say, oh, I was just playing. We hopefully have developed the skills to check in and ask another person that question. But our children, they have not developed those skills yet. I mean, that is really a higher order skill that is learned a lot later in life. I mean, at the earliest I've seen that develop is early 20s. And so it is something that I'm trying to teach my teenage patients. I'm trying to teach them to say back to their friend, did you mean to hurt my feelings? Because you did. So that they can have more honest, open conversations with their peers. But, that is really difficult for them to confront and be so bold about that. Why should we talk about bullying? About 20% of students aged 12 to 18 experience bullying nationwide. And students aged 12 to 18 who reported being bullied said they thought those who bullied them had the ability to influence other students' perception of them, 56%. Y'all, that is what really freaks out our kids. It really does panic our kids. They say, this person who's a bully, everybody listens to them. And if they don't like me, then everybody else is not going to like me either. They have more social influence. They're physically stronger or larger, 40%, and they have more money, 31%. Where does it occur? The following percentage of students aged 12 to 18 experience bullying in the following places. The hallway or the stairwell, 43%. The classroom, 42%. The cafeteria, 26%. Outside on the school grounds, 21%. Online or text, 15%. I'm going to tell y'all later when we talk about cyberbullying that number is way underreported because cyberbullying goes unreported. So we have no idea really the actual percentage of students who experience cyberbullying, in my opinion. The bathroom or the locker room, 12%. Somewhere else in the school building, 2%. This is important data for schools when they're trying to make plans about reducing bullying or reducing negative peer interactions. Intensifying supervision in these areas or putting cameras in these areas can be helpful. Approximately 46% of students aged 12 to 18 who were bullied during the school year notified an adult at school about the bullying. I'm hoping to see that number go up as we have more schools implement anti-bullying programs and anonymous means of reporting. Let's think about the impact of bullying. Youth involved in bullying is both the victims and the aggressors. I want y'all to really understand this phenomenon. When I was a kid growing up, I already told you we didn't have a whole lot of bullying in my school, but that you pretty much were either one or the other. Okay, you were either the bully who beat people up and really was mean and teased people and stole their lunch, or you were bullied upon, but you weren't both, okay? That is totally different now, especially with cyberbullying, because it doesn't really matter what size you are, and you can do it anonymously. So cyberbullying has been a game changer for this whole concept of bullying and peer pressure. And so kids sometimes are the victim in the morning and the bully in the afternoon. I mean, they go back and forth. And mental health problems occur in both the bully and the victim, okay? They experience more depression, more anxiety, more suicidal thoughts and behaviors than their uninvolved peers. Cyberbullying has a stronger association with suicidal ideation than in-person victimization. And we're going to talk about why that is. I have a really good theory about why cyberbullying is more closely linked to suicide than actual in-person bullying. These negative effects persist even after the abuse has stopped and are linked to a wide range of physical, mental, and economic challenges in adulthood. Guys, I read studies that showed the effects of bullying persisted into your 50s. Okay, I'm 51. Think about that. I mean, think how long that experience of bullying affects another person, all into their adulthood. That's a long time. Other research emphasizes the economic impact of bullying due to the lifelong problems created. These youth have a lack of social relationships and overall decreased quality of life through midlife. So their ability to form social relationships is diminished because they don't trust people. Why should they trust people? People have not been good to them. It's been a negative experience. 59.6% of children report sadness and hopelessness versus 25.8% of those who've not been bullied. 40% report having a suicide plan versus only 13% of those who were not bullied. 32% report having made a suicide attempt versus only 10% of those who have not been bullied. And if bullying is related to a parent's body dysmorphia, which is being really dissatisfied with your body and thinking that there's something wrong with it, and eating disorders develop. Children who are bullied are often insecure or cautious children. They lack physical strengths. They often have physical or mental disabilities. Sometimes they're overweight. Their level of attractiveness may be below average. They might wear glasses, have a speech impediment. They might have sexual orientation that's in the minority. They might have gender dysphoria. That means being unhappy with the gender that they were assigned. They might have mental disabilities, and they might be children who are living in poverty. And let's talk about the characteristics of the bully. And these are for, I think, mostly in-person bullies. They have impulsive behavior, dominating behavior, very low frustration tolerance. Small things get on their nerves. They have a lack of empathy sometimes. They might not, feel guilty about what takes place. Some of them have a need to be the center of attention. And I see that in my cyberbullies. They need attention, attention, attention. They have an unhealthy attitude towards violence and its consequences. And sometimes they're the victim and sometimes they're the perpetrator. And I want you to pay special attention to this slide because these are some things to look for to recognize whether or not your child might be the victim of bullying. They might start having physical complaints. That's one of the first signs that brings a child into my office. And the complaint is she just keeps saying that she has a stomach ache and it's always before school. Or she just keeps complaining that she has a headache and she calls and has to call me and want me to come get her from school. And this always occurs on Sunday night or Monday morning, and it doesn't occur the week of spring break. And you start to see a pattern of this is occurring when they are around their peers, but not when they're not around their peers, okay? And really, I'm not saying that the children are making up the stomach ache and the headache, so please don't believe that I am, because normally they're not. Normally their stomach does hurt, and their head does hurt. But it hurts because they are really stressed out because they're going to have to go to school and they're going to have to face something that they don't want to face. And so that is what is going on there. They withdraw from their friends and their activities. You find them just not want to do stuff. They don't want to go to the basketball game. They don't want to go to the football game. They just want to stay in their room. They don't even want to go to church anymore. They just want to stay in their room. You might see a decline in their schoolwork. Y'all, I have had patients who have been A and B students and go all the way to C and B students, just within a semester. And you can tie it to an episode of bullying. Maybe these 2 or 3 people decided they really wanted to harass this person and their grades just tanked because they just became so upset about it that they could not do their work anymore. They might even have nightmares. I have a lot of, especially elementary children. We don't see bullying as much in the really young grades, but we start seeing it like in 3rd, 4th grade a little bit, and that's where those kids you start seeing nightmares. Some of them even start wetting the bed again, and that's, kids who really get afraid. And they get moody. I mean, it's like you're thinking, what has happened to my child? My angel is all of a sudden so irritable and just like, sometimes they're in a great mood and then sometimes they're in a terrible mood. Well, it has to do with what text they received or what got posted on their Instagram, and so they're reacting to something. And you've got to figure out what is it that they are reacting to, okay? Types of bullies. There's verbal bullying, like name-calling, threats, teasing, rumors, and slander. This is a real big thing, especially among our preteen and teen population. Rumors are not new to this generation, but the ability to spread a rumor has drastically changed, okay? Because it can spread within a second, and it can be out to 200 people just like that, okay? And so that's a really big thing. Physical threats or actual physical harm, hitting, kicking, pushing. Social, leaving someone out of a group on purpose. Oftentimes, kids this is a big deal when, a group of students is invited to an event and they just have one person in the class that's not invited. Or one person, like there's a friend group of 4 and they all decide to go to the movies. That there's normally a friend group of 5, but they don't invite that 5th person. And so that is a lot of what I'm seeing in my office, people being affected by that. Extortion, stealing someone's money or things. This happens a lot of times, especially in gym locker rooms. Cyberbullying, using computers, the internet, or cell phone to bully others. And I'm going to save that for when I talk only about that. Introducing cyberbullying. 88% of teens in the USA have access to internet-enabled devices, but compare that to 99% of kids in the UK who have an online presence. So I think that this number is only going to continue to increase. Our kids have access to the internet, and I think it's unreasonable to think that you're going to be able to keep them away from it. Because even if you take it from them, you take their phone from them, you take their laptop from them, they go to school, and their friend who has a phone is going to let them get on their phone. I mean, so it's really difficult to patrol whether or not your child has access to the media. How common is cyberbullying? Now, this is what's reported in most studies, but there's a huge range, as you see. I mean, I've researched lots of different articles, and this percentage was vastly different. But the lowest was 15%, and the highest I saw was 29% of high schoolers report having been cyberbullied. But 90% of middle school students have had their feelings hurt online. 75% have visited a website bashing another student. And I want to just say something about that. You know that there are social media platforms that will allow youth to post things anonymously. And this is a major problem. And some of the, this youth I've seen in the greatest amount of distress came in because things were being posted about them anonymously. And that was what was so upsetting to them, was they didn't know who was doing it. So they didn't, and they said to me, I could be sitting beside them at lunch. I could invite them to my house, and I could not know that it was them, that they're the ones who are posting all of this information about you. And so, in my role as a therapist, I have reached out and contacted these platforms about this type of bashing. And most of the time, I have been able to get the website to take it down. To take it down, to block it. They trace the IP address, the person gets in trouble. Normally, you can kind of work that out. It takes about 3 days, but normally within 3 days, you can get it worked out. The child receives some relief that you're at least trying. But I will tell you that I was very disappointed with Facebook when I had someone posted a video of a patient who was engaging in self-harming behaviors, and they were being secretly videoed, and a person posted that video, and it was shared multiple times, and the person was harassed and bullied about it, and Facebook refused to take it down and said it did not violate their community rules. So that's just my little rant about Facebook. Only 15% of persons polled knew what cyberbullying was, so we really need to educate ourselves about what cyberbullying is. Let's look at the more types: flaming, using inflammatory or vulgar words to provoke an online fight, continuously sending vicious, mean, or disturbing emails or texts to an individual, and I've already mentioned that requests for pics are on the rise. In the rumor mill, we talked about that. Impersonation. Sometimes people will post things anonymously, and sometimes they'll pretend to be somebody else. Sometimes they'll hack into someone's account, steal their picture, create a profile, start posting stuff, pretending to be them. And so you just have to know that kids are getting really creative with how they go about doing things. Outing. Sometimes people will post secrets that belong to their friends, or they'll fool someone into sharing personal information with them online, and then they will post it so that other people can see it. Like, have you ever kissed anyone? The person answers, and then they send it out to lots of different people. Or they'll exclude someone from an online group. There's a group called Discord that I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but I have some patients who are heavily involved in that platform, and they have become very distressed that they have gotten kicked out of some of those groups that they're in. And so that is just another way that they can be rejected. Cyber stalking is ongoing harassment and denigration that causes a person considerable fear for his or her safety. So I want you to pay attention to the number in the second line here. This study was conducted in 2021. It included 8,274 students that completed the National Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System. I make that point just because I want you to know that the data that I'm about to show you is not from a really small scale study. This is a current study. It was done in 2021, and it was large. Okay, it was very large. They involved a lot of youth in this study. And so I think that what we can learn from this is very reliable. And it wasn't one study, okay? So these researchers reviewed lots of studies, and then they picked the best studies, and they got the data from those studies. And so that is what I'm presenting to you tonight. Research has found that both being the aggressor of in-person bullying and the victim leads to increased risk of suicide. So it is not only the victims of bullying who are at risk of suicide. The bullies themselves are at risk of suicide. And being the perpetrator of cyberbullying does not tend to increase the risk of suicide. Don't y'all find that strange? You know, I mean, we're looking at all of this, and it would seem that it wouldn't make a difference. Do you want to know why it's different? Because they can be anonymous. So there is not the stress of being caught. So they can hide behind the screen, they can hide behind a fake identity, and they can be mean, and take out all their anger, all their aggression on whoever it is that they're jealous of or that they're angry at, without having to worry that they're going to get called into the principal's office or that the parent is going to take their car or their phone because they're anonymously doing it. So I think that's the reason that they are at lower risk of suicide. People avoid the stress associated with consequences of their behavior, and most victims of cyberbullying don't report it, so they're not telling. So that's another reason. These offenders are very different from traditional bullies. Y'all, I'm close to being done. I know this is a lot of information. Researchers found that cyberbullying decreased. Oh, this I thought was so interesting. All of the things that the pandemic cost us, okay? There are a lot of negative things that happened because of the pandemic. Youth got behind academically, we suffered economically. However, one thing that got better was bullying went down. So researchers found that Google searches for bullying-related terms dropped 30 to 35% during the pandemic, particularly in areas where schools were fully remote. And they also found that a return to school led to a return to pre-pandemic levels. So we know that something interesting happened when the schools shut down. You know, the bullying went way down. And what does this mean? We know that in-person interactions are important drivers of in-person school bullying and cyberbullying. Another finding is that the pandemic increased loneliness in youth, but decreased stress related to academic pressures and bullying. And I mentioned that we see this in our private practice. In the months of June and July, when school is out, we don't have a lot of kids coming in with anxiety about whether or not they're going to perform academically, or anxiety about whether or not people are going to be mean to them. But we do see them bored, and we do see them lonely. And so we notice those changes occur throughout the year. Now, I told you earlier that other word, modifiable, that I wanted you to really remember, that bullying is modifiable. If you remember nothing else, remember that. Bullying is modifiable. We can change it. We can do something about it. But this is the second word that I want you to remember, and it's dose-specific response. The term dose-specific refers to the relationship between the applied dose, or the amount of a substance administered, and the effect that's observed. Okay? So, you know, we really use this word a lot in science when I tell someone, you know, we're going to start your child on a certain dose of a medicine, and it may not help, but we're going to make sure that they don't have any side effects. Then they're probably going to have to increase the dose before we have a response. Okay? That's a dose response. Some people have allergic responses when doses are increased. Okay? So what researchers found is that there's a dose response tied to bullying. So how often a person gets bullied impacts how they respond. All right, so more is worse, obviously. With medication, and I already said that, I'm trying to speed this up, but with in-person bullying occurring 16% of the week, that's how often we think it occurs, in-person bullying. We think it occurs 16% of the week in high school. We think it occurs 28% of the week in middle school. Cyberbullying has impacted the dose of bullying. Because, you know, when the child goes home, they are still available. So that bully still had, when I went home, no one had access to me. You know, it was long distance to call my house. It was $1.30 a minute, and so nobody called and talked to me. But now that we have social media, kids sometimes are up at 2 a.m. on their phone, okay, interacting with people that are being ugly to them, that are being mean to them. We also know that there are improved outcomes with the increased dose of bullying intervention. So research shows that the frequency of cyberbullying experiences and suicidality are dose specific. Even when they look at all the other factors, the number of times a person was bullied is what is most closely tied to whether or not they will become suicidal. And Instagram tends to lead when you look at all the different social media platforms about where cyberbullying is occurring. Facebook and Snapchat have similar impacts. TikTok is growing in popularity. Discord, because of anonymity, and I'm going to show you what Discord looks like. A lot of young people have spam pages. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with what that word means, but that's really their fake Instagram page. And so they just come up with a different name that they go by. It's the page their parent doesn't know about, but their friends know about. Okay, and so your young person, if you notice they have posted in the Instagram in about 2 years, it's because they're not posting on that page anymore. They're posting on a different page. And it dropped 30% during the pandemic. And let's talk about what to do about it. There are some legislative interventions that have occurred. Alabama is one of 44 states that has passed legislation against bullying. I'm not going to go through this House bill, but essentially what it did was it ensured that schools formed policies prohibiting harassment, violence, and threats of violence on school property, on a school bus, or at a school-sponsored event. Now, the research of this large study that I talked about earlier had some interesting findings. And some of these just really blew my mind. I'm a bit of a nerd, so I don't know if it's going to blow your mind the way it did mine, but it said that the first one was kind of expected. It said that anti-bullying interventions are effective at reducing bullying. It said that they were also effective at reducing mental health problems. But the next one was what blew my mind. And it said that the duration of the intervention really didn't matter. It was not statistically significant. And the range was from as short as 1 week to as long as 144 weeks. And there was not this huge statistical difference in a program that lasted 144 weeks compared to 1 week. So essentially, if you just do something, it's going to make a difference. And that, I think, was so mind-blowing, but also inspiring and motivating. Y'all, we can do this because we can do just a little and we can get a big result. The effectiveness also did not diminish over time. They followed up at 104 weeks was the longest follow-up. And except for cyberbullying tend to creep back up and they needed a refresher. But in-person bullying did not creep back up after the intervention. And you have influenced somebody's life. I mean, bullying impacts a person to their 50s, but as small as 1 week of intervention can make this much difference. I mean, that's really huge in my opinion. Researchers found an average decrease in 20% of bullying rates. They found that for an estimated bullying prevalence of 15%, which is the lowest, the most conservative estimate, an average intervention needs to include, y'all, this is really, I know, complicated science, but it's going to make sense on the next slide, I promise. It said that as long as 207 people were in the group, you've made a difference in bullying perpetration. As long as 140 people are present, you've made a difference in bullying exposure. And as long as 107 people are present, you improve mental health outcomes. Now, that sounds like, when I first read that, I was like, wow, that's a lot of people that have to show up in order for you to say that you've done something. But let's compare it, okay? Let's compare it to a dose of aspirin. Y'all, a dose of aspirin, 35,450 people have to take a dose of aspirin in order for it to prevent one stroke. Okay? And 324 young girls have to take the HPV vaccine in order for it to prevent 1 case of cervical cancer. But yet, you know, the HPV vaccine is offered, aspirin is recommended. So the pen on the bullying intervention was much lower than what it is for aspirin and HPV, so it's a no-brainer that we should be doing this. One Finnish study conducted a cost analysis, and they predict a net savings of $66,172 for a cohort of 200 students through 50 years of age. And the areas that improved were decreased bullying perpetration, decreased exposure, decreased cyberbullying, increase in attitudes that discourage bullying, decrease in attitudes that encourage bullying, decreased mental health problems, and improved overall school climate. Don't we all want those things? I mean, we all, I think, want those things. And what schools can do, they can implement bullying intervention programs, they can have periodic refreshers for cyberbullying, they can create a climate among staff that teasing and bullying are intolerable. They can create a climate that bullying behavior will be addressed through discipline, and they can provide mental health referrals when needed for both the bully and the victim. And what parents can do. You guys, we need to have very solid relationships with our children so that they feel safe and they feel that they can come to us if they are experiencing bullying. That if they're being pressured to bully, they need to feel that they can tell us, and they need to feel that we will believe them, and that we will care about them, and that we will do something about it. We will not tell them to suck it up. Because I can't tell you how many kids that I have that give the nerve to say something to their parents, and that's what they're told. And they are just, you know, devastated, and they feel invalidated. They need to be able to open up about problems that they're encountering. Parents need to look for the warning signs we talked about earlier. And most importantly, guys, we need to create climates of kindness in our homes. You know, if we are constantly talking negatively about other adults, then our children are watching that, and they are going to model that behavior. If we are making fun of and teasing and using racial slurs, then our children are picking up on that, and they are going to repeat that behavior. So we have to model it for ourselves what we want to see in them. So create a climate of kindness and inclusivity in your home. Pay attention. Watch if your child takes their phone to the bathroom. That should be a red flag. There's nothing that they need their phone in the bathroom for, okay? Demand privacy. If they start demanding privacy with regard to their phone, they start always flipping their phone upside down. They start always hiding it. Or they become irate if their phone is taken, even for a short amount of time. They have sharp fluctuations in their mood, or they suddenly do not want to go to school. Those should be warning signs. This is a picture of what Discord looks like, and I only want to give this one criticism about them. They say that they're not an anonymous platform because users are identified by their username, which is chosen by the user, followed by a pound sign and a 4-digit number known as their Discord tag. Discord doesn't ask for anyone's real name on sign-up, but we're able to track who is responsible for what by tying the username to an email address and an IP address. So they are not anonymous, but they don't have to use their real name. I can't make that match. But anyway, be careful. I'm really concerned about this particular platform compared to the other platforms because, you know, they don't know, our kids don't know who in the world they're talking to. They don't have profile pictures on this platform, and they just go and they look for communities of people who have similar interests. So it might be a community of people who like to play a particular video game, and maybe it's harmless, and maybe that's all the people are doing. But I don't know who all's on there. And so I want you as parents to pay attention to who your child is interacting with when they're on the web. These are just some tools and resources that there are ways that you can put spyware on your child's mobile devices. I'm not a big fan of this. I don't promote this. unless there has been an incident that has caused you to not be able to trust your child. I would rather you develop the kind of relationship where your child tells you things so that you don't have to go behind their back. But I think that once you have caught them doing something that is really harmful to them, I think that then it is okay to consider using some of these strategies. And that's just more of the same. What the community can do, lastly, community organizations can ensure that there's not a climate of bullying in their organization. It's not just happening in schools. It's happening in churches. It's happening in sports. It's happening in youth sports. So as community leaders, we need to make sure that there's not a climate of bullying. Adults can serve as mentors to vulnerable children and teens. Y'all, our community needs mentors. I cannot emphasize that enough. We really need mentors to step up and to be there for these young people who are struggling. You need to support organizations that support our youth, like the Child Advocacy Center, the Department of Human Resources. Consider being an adoptive or foster parent. The United Methodist Children's Home has in-home services for youth. South Central Mental Health has a summer youth program so that they get the kids together all throughout the summer. And it gives them an outlet and something to do, and helps to combat boredom, because we know that kids get in trouble when they have too much idle time on their hands. And I have one last thing. I polled some of my patients and I asked them to give me a comment about how bullying has impacted their life. And I thought there was some sound with this slide, but it's not playing, so I'm just going to read it. They told me that bullying causes, these are quotes from actual patients, bullying causes people to become overly self-aware and causes low self-esteem. Causes a normal person to become paranoid with how they look and act. Causes them to change their appearance and behavior to avoid bullying. I've been accused of being a bully, but do not think I am a bully. Kids just get on my nerves, and so I do what I need to do so they'll leave me alone.
Eventually, it made me feel like something was wrong with me, and I questioned everything about myself. Every day I focused on wanting to change myself in hopes of people liking me anymore and wanting to be around me. It made me feel bad about myself, like there was something wrong with me. What helped me the most was friends stepping in, understanding what I was going through. One time in second grade, someone made fun of my teeth on the bus, and I cried the whole way home. My mom picked me up. She made me an appointment with the orthodontist the next week.
And this other quote was, I was always bullied for my size, my stutter, and sometimes my ASD. However, I rose above it and didn't let it affect my well-being too much. So don't lose the point that the bystander stepping in is what really mattered to the young person. So encourage your kids to be that person. Encourage your kids to be the person who stands up for the person who's being teased and ridiculed. And I thank you so much for your time. Let me know if you have any questions.
We have some time. We'll open it up for some questions from the audience. Does anyone have anything? If not, we can. Are you? Okay.
So I have seen some of the area schools doing initiatives about bullying, about suicide. Like I know Andalusia High School as well as Opp High School are doing the Love Life Legacy assemblies for parents to promote awareness of suicide and bullying. What are some other initiatives that the schools can provide to the community, or other resources that you think they can provide?
So I'm so glad that you asked that question, because the research article that looked at the 82,000 students, it printed out all of the different bullying intervention programs. And I would love to make that available to any school counselor who wants to look at the different intervention programs that they can offer to their young people. Because there's a whole lot of different ones, and they're for different ages. But I think that it could run very much like the Love Like Legacy with, 10 minutes of educational material being presented during homeroom, and then, opportunities for young people to speak out if they're experiencing bullying and get referred for counseling services if that's needed. So I do have that, and I'll make that, I'll make my, that article available if you want to post it on your webpage, and then everyone could have those resources.
We would love just to read that.
Okay, great.
What age, I'm sorry.
I was
Go
wondering,
ahead.
do you have any, like kid-friendly materials for parents that we could use to kind of address these topics with our children?
Oh, I know that they're out there. So why don't I try to find some of those, and we can add those to the resource, and we can just all kind of use LBW as a resource for these materials.
Because my mind really gets blown every day, things that my daughter comes home and tells me what's going on, and she's just 9. Everything is just kind of done these kids so early.
It is.
And they don't know how to handle it.
You're right.
Going off that, what's the age are you seeing the bully emerge or individuals getting bullied?
Well, we see a little bit in that age group, but the age that I think has the biggest impact starts at 10 years old.
Right.
And then the 10 to 14, I think those individuals have it the worst. And then it kind of slows down and moves into mostly cyberbullying in the 15 and up age.
It's absolutely starting this year though. They're in the 3rd grade, and it's reared its ugly head.
Yeah.
This is where it has started.
That's really, it's really difficult, but what she needs more than anything is to know that you love and support her,
Right.
and that she can talk to you about it.
Well, she's, luckily she's the kind of kid that she's not going to stand around let anybody get bullied. She's real quick to jump in and defend somebody and take it from them. But yet, when it comes to her, she's not. She doesn't do it to stick it up for herself.
Yeah, normally with kids like that, I just say to them, okay, now if that was your friend Sally, what would you do?
That's what I tell her.
Yeah.
You kind of stand up for yourself too sometimes.
Right.
Any other questions? Okay. We have door prizes, so I will turn it over to you guys. Thank you, Dr. Crosby.
Okay, sure. So just- Okay. All right, so the first door prize is an oil change courtesy of Step 1 Andalusia. All right. I'll read the ticket number 6611385. All right. Okay, the next one is a cast iron skillet courtesy of Power South.
You can now see why I am not being white, why I work at a college and not on a, okay.
All right, so we have 6611391. 391? Is that good? Yeah, okay. We have 2 of those actually, so the next one is, the last 3 numbers are 375. All right. Next is a $20 car wash gift certificate courtesy of Splash Hopper. The last 3 numbers are 382. Okay. And then Holmes Pecans has provided an oversized checkers, and the last 3 numbers is 389.
Somebody's gonna be having some old-fashioned fun here.
Is that yours? Okay. Next is insulated casserole tote, courtesy of Power South, 378. Yeah. Free pizza, courtesy of Little Caesars, 388. Another free piece of courtesy Little Caesars is 383. And finally, police throw blanket courtesy of Power South is 390. All right. Congratulations.
We appreciate you coming tonight. Next week, we will go into our third week of Community Candid, and we will have Mr. Walt Merrill will be here to discuss drug trends. And we try to stay away from, the type of drugs that are out there. We know that, but we're wanting to know kind of where our kids could be hiding drugs, what kind of things are out there that we need to be looking at, and the trends that are out there. So we really think it's going to be a good week for our parents. We hope that you invite anyone, husbands, kids. Well, they may not want to come, but anyone is welcome. We want people to come, and we want you to be a part of what we have going on. So we invite you back next week, same time. Remember, there is portable food options across the way at Saints Cafe. I'm not sure what time they close tonight, but if you're able to come early next week, please. They have phenomenal food. And childcare. Oh yeah, we also have childcare. So tell your friends, bring their little ones, and they can play over there with our volleyball team and go to education teachers. Also, make sure you sign in. We will be awarding a $5,000 cash scholarship to one particular person. Cash scholarship to LBW. Make that clear. At the end of this thing, so make sure you sign in, and we look forward to seeing y'all next week. Thank y'all.
Well, no, because we're going to Mount Kiva. Always there. Yeah, well, and there's some guys that he'll go to. Yeah, I've got schoolwork or whatever.
It was funny because it was just like, she was like, good.
Yeah, we were in Orlando last weekend.
Oh, good. Yeah, oh, I have a feeling, people watch it, especially, especially when you put resources on there and they know they can go to this resource. Pamphlets. Good, because that's my whole idea, right? I feel it's very worthwhile. Because LBW is such a community and just be more, so that's great. I'll find some stuff in there.
Do you want to come and take the mic and meet with Jerry? You need it? I think you put it in your bag.
That one's down here.
Your purse.
Yeah, probably. Probably, yeah, that would be great. So I'm gonna go take,
Well, that way you
we'll take it home.
Well,
That way you're not short one.
your opposition in the car.
Yeah.